Welcome to another episode of the Blemished Beauty Podcast. This podcast was designed with you in mind. If you're ready to erase the norm and embrace the truth, come pull up a chair, grab a journal, and tell a friend that your favorite Jersey girl is back with another episode. So let's get into it.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Blemished Beauty Podcast with your host, your favorite Jersey girl, Cheryl Renee. And tonight we're going to have a discussion with Miss Bambi Lynn. And when I first saw her on another podcast, shout out to Successful Toy Podcast, and she was a ball of energy and I loved it. So I had to bring her on the show so you guys can hear about her story because we are still in season 4 and we are tapping into survivor stories. So this is your trigger warning. All the episodes that we will be tackling this season are about survivor stories, tackling those topics of domestic violence, infancy loss, suicide, and all the things. So this is your trigger warning. After the interlude, I will bring Bambi Lynn to the stage so she can tell you all about who she is and her survivor story. Hey, Bambi, how are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm super excited about this episode.
I am too. You know, I was going to say your introduction to me, you know, I'm writing a story right now. I'm writing a blog on mirrors. And when I saw that picture, my first thought went, oh my goodness, look at all that flab. Oh, look at this. I didn't have a girdle on.
Oh my God.
And my next thought was, wait a minute, I'm writing a blog on mirrors, like how I have to accept a mirror. So that was just funny that I saw that in my first reaction, like, oh, dang it. And then my second reaction is Bambi Lynn.
Well, we're going to own our scars. We're going to own our flab and everything.
Absolutely. And I love the title. I love that, Own Your Own Scars, you know, because we all have them.
Yes.
You know, none of us are leaving this place unblemished. You know, none of us are leaving this place, you know, without having something that has turned from ashes to beauty. You know, not any of us are not leaving without a story to be told, and how God transformed our stories and how we went from trauma to triumph, brokenness to, you know, to wholeness. We all got them. Just some of us are willing and able and brave enough to finally say, yes, I'm going to tell my story.
Yes. And speaking of that, you love to write blogs, you have books and all of those things. You can tell the people quickly a little bit about who you are and your journey, your blog, and why we are here today.
Well, we're here because you liked me on another podcast.
That is true.
So, you know, my name is Bambi Lynn. My first name is Bambi. My middle name is Lynn. I don't go by my maiden or my married names because I'm not going to give people that, you know, gave me some of those scars. I'm not giving them credit for, you know, who I have become. So
that's right.
I am a mother of 6 adult children. I have 4 daughters. My oldest daughter is 37 and my young sons are 25. They're all married. And I have 13 grandchildren. One grandson is, you know, in heaven, and he was born, and hours after he was born, he passed away. His name is Isaac. So he is still my legacy. He is still, you know, the sacrifice, you know, when Abraham took Isaac up to, you know, to sacrifice, you know, my Isaac, you know, is sacrificed, but there's stories to be told and stories that have been told to make sure that his name continues to live on. I am a writer. I published 2 books. My third one is in the process of being edited. I love to blog. I love to use everyday situations and make them into stories that really resonates, with people. So that's kind of exciting.
So you said you love to blog. Now I tried to blog, but I don't know if I'm doing it right, because I feel like a blog should have a certain length to it. Like, so how do you decide? Well, for me, I have a podcast, so I'm like, okay, should I do a blog post about the podcast episode? Like, how do you find those titles and you keep blogging? How do you come up with your creativity?
I absolutely know now in my life, at being 55 years old, I do have a gift. I am able to take different situations and circumstances and be able to look at them in a way and be able to find a lesson, through those situations and through things. So like this past week's blog that just came out today is actually, the title of it, I think, was "We Can't Always Stay a Caterpillar." And the whole premises of it is that when we are born, when a caterpillar was born, or it was hatched, or whatever you want to call it, everything he needed was within inside of him to become a butterfly. So everything that we need to be able to survive in our own lives has already been planted within inside of us. The Bible tells us that through the foundations of time, God fashioned us and he formed us into our mother's womb. So everything that I need to become who he wants me to be has already been planted inside of me. So I just think that situations and circumstances and trials and tribulations begin to bring all of that together. And what I choose to do with those situations is what makes me who I am today. So when you think about a caterpillar, you think about, when, especially a monarch butterfly. Someday I'm going to write a story about the correlation between the monarch butterfly and Christianity. Because when you look at a monarch butterfly, the monarch butterfly goes to a milkweed, which milk is the word of God, puts an egg on the milkweed, and the egg begins to start growing and becomes a caterpillar. The caterpillar is hatched. A caterpillar has to go through 5 stages of he's molting himself, getting rid of the skin. 5 is the number of grace. And from the beginning to the end, from the beginning of that egg to the end, when that butterfly flies away, it is 40 days. So 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days Jesus spent in the wilderness, preparing himself for his, for the ministry that he was going to be part of. Then you keep going. And then when a caterpillar is ready to turn into a chrysalis, he goes up, moves up, and he turns into the letter J, which is Jesus. And he begins to molt himself and form this chrysalis over him. The last thing that caterpillar does is that he forms a golden crown around, and that's the seal. And he spends all of that time within inside of the chrysalis, because God has to show him, and God has to show us in the darkest moments of our lives. God has to show us, and he has to give us a new mind. He has to renew our minds. He had to renew the caterpillar's mind, because he was preparing him to become a butterfly. He has to renew our minds, because he's preparing us for greatness. He's preparing us that he doesn't want us to live in the trauma of our lives. He wants us to be transformed into something that could lead other people to Christ. He wants us to be transformed so that the people behind us, they can see that they have a first aid kit, because I've already walked through it.
Okay.
So that's what happens when you have this butterfly, and this butterfly emerges, out of the chrysalis, a new person, a new creation. And you cannot touch that butterfly until the blood has flown all through his whole body and all of his wings. Once we have been in the presence of God, and once we've been in his presence and the blood flows through us, we are transformed and we are renewed. And then we're able to fly to go lay the eggs of the gospel everywhere, because we have already been through the process.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're using a butterfly, because I had said this on one show. I said, when you get to that stage, you see different. Like what the caterpillar seen on the level that it was, it will never see on the level that it is as a butterfly.
Yes.
And that is the exact same thing. Like once you step into or you tap into that relationship with God, it should make you change how you see things. And when you go through things, because you know that you've survived 100% of the things that you thought would take you out. So you know who you are and who you are. So it shouldn't affect you as it used to, but you're still going to get affected because you're human, but
Oh
it
my
shouldn't
goodness.
affect you.
Absolutely. And and I tell people too, I may serve Jesus and I may go through things in my life, but I get sucker punched too.
Okay.
I get the wind knocked out of me, that I am down for the count. But then I have to spend that time being down for the count. I have to spend the time grieving the things that I have lost. I have to grieve the death of a promise. I have to grieve the death of a dream in my own life. But then once I grieve it, then I can rise up and, because the Bible is very clear. It's not the falling down that matters, because we're all going to fall down. It's the getting up that matters. It's us rising again and saying, okay, I'm going to walk. Though none go with me, I will still follow you. It doesn't take, when I accepted Jesus at 16 years old, I was at a desperate state. I had found myself on a bridge. I had found myself looking down to the water and saying, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I found myself saying, nobody's going to even know that I'm gone. Nobody's going to miss me. Who cares that Bambi's leaving this earth? And then I went to jump and a police officer grabbed me and he brought me to a psychiatric center for children. And that is where I found out that I was pregnant for my oldest daughter, which is 37 years old, now. And, and I went into my room and I went down on the ground and I said, if there truly is a God, if you are real, you saved me and my baby, and I will honor you all the days of my life. And I promise I will serve you. I didn't know what that looked like at 16 years old. I didn't know that I was going to, marry men that would not love me, but would cheat on me and would hit me. I didn't know that it was going to be a time that I would lose, some of my children because of the choices that I had made in staying with a man that, hit me. I didn't know serving Jesus wasn't going to take away the things of this world that were going to knock me down. But I did know that I made a promise as a 16-year-old girl pregnant in a psychiatric center. I made a promise. I made a promise that I was going to serve him all the days of my life. And it has not been easy. It has not been this, rainbows and unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a molding. It has been turning the ashes of my life and how he has turned them into something beautiful. But I still had to have ashes. And I think that sometimes, I think that as Christians, we do an injustice to people by not telling our stories, because they see us and they say, oh, I can never be Bambi. But if I continue to tell my story and continue to say it was tough, I had a husband that his family served God. He said that he loved the Lord, but yet he puts his hands around my neck and says, repeat after me, you will submit. And I pass out and I wake up and he's sitting on a couch. I still had to go through that. I still had to go through him spitting in my face and telling me that I was not going to amount to anything. But when he went to bed at night, I marched around my house and I plead the blood of Jesus around my house. And I asked the questions, why God? Why is this happening? I can't tell you why it happened, but I can tell you what God did through it. And I can tell you that he did have me in the palm of his hands, and that I can be on these podcasts today to be able to tell the story that God really did have my back. Didn't change the situation, but I do know that he had my back.
Yeah. And a lot of the times we get so focused, and I'm a visual person, so I always give visuals. I think about Jesus and the disciples when they were on the boat and it was the storm. We get so focused with the storm that we forget who is enduring the storm with us. Yes. Like Jesus is asleep because he already know, like, ain't nothing going on. There is, like, when you have the safety in knowing that you're safe, certain things don't affect you.
Yes.
And that's how Jesus is. Like he knows already the outcome, so he's safe. He don't need to be excited or anxious or whatever we be feeling, but we do that knowing good and well that Jesus is with us. And sometimes we go through these storms and we shouldn't focus on the storms, but we do. But we shouldn't focus on the storms because we know who's enduring the storms with us. So if we could focus more on that, and I think that's why it's important for us, like you said, to tell our stories, because if he could do it for you, he can do it for me. If he could do it for us, he can do it for the ones who are watching. He could do it for the ones who are listening. And when people hear, and I guess that's probably why they say we are overcome by the word of our testimonies,
Absolutely.
because it empowers you when you hear somebody who's in a situation like yours or similar to yours to know that they've gotten through it so you can get through it too. But if we remain silent, we will never encourage that next person. I always say that we're not going through stuff for us. We're going through it for other people. We are the blueprint for someone else.
I say that all the time. I say that our stories are not for us. Our stories are for the people behind us. You know, our stories are because, you know, as an author, when I think about it, as an author, I don't read my books. You know, I read them once, but they're not for me. They're for me to write them and to let them go into other people's lives. You know, when I did write my first book, The Journey of Josephine, and that was my memoir of the things that I had gone through, you know, since I was a 6-year-old little girl. My mother gave me a rag doll, and that rag doll went through this journey with me. She was my security blanket, and she went through me during the times that I was sexually abused by my grandfather, sexually assaulted by my uncle. She went with me when I made choices because I was trying to find love in all the wrong places. So I find myself in back seats of cars trying to find love. She was with me the times that I tried to commit suicide and said that nobody's ever going to care that I'm dead anyhow. She went with me. So my rag doll became my security blanket. And so I wrote my story using her and realizing that all the pieces, when I think about our lives and I think about as us as little girls, we have this vision in our mind. We have this vision in our lives of what life is going to turn out. You know, it's going to be the picket fence. We're going to be the Joneses. We're going to have 2 children. We're going to have a little dog. You know, the husband's going to come in, kiss our cheek, and we're going to have dinner on the table. And that was the picture that we formed. But the reality is there was a picture that was taking place, but it wasn't that. Yeah. But our picture, but our pieces in our box, our pieces in our puzzle is just as much as a masterpiece as the Joneses. Absolutely. I just didn't end up in a Joneses family. I ended up in a broken family. I ended up in a home that my father was a very mean alcoholic. I ended up in a home that I was bullied and I was the black sheep. But God used that. He used everything. When I think about it, and that's why I think the caterpillar is such an amazing analogy, because everything that caterpillar needed, he was born with. Everything that I needed, I was born with. God had already planted those seeds, you know, within my life. And he has already continued from the moment that he formed me to the moment that I am today. He has transformed me over and over and over again for me to become the person that I am. He has planted those seeds, you know, inside of my life. Today I went on the side of the road, and there's cotton fields, you know, where I live. And I'm not originally from the South. I'm originally from the North. So a cotton field to me is like, I can't believe that I can hold cotton in my hand, and that's what they use to make money. And it's real cotton in my hand. But today I stopped at a cotton field and I realized that the cottons haven't turned into cotton yet. You know, so it was a seed, and then it was a flower, and then it turns into cotton, which I didn't know was a flower first. I just thought that it bloomed out of a cotton, but it's the seeds, you know, it's the process, you know, for it to turn into cotton. And that's us. We're a process. We're a process turning into something by the renewing of our minds and by the word of our testimony and by being vulnerable, you know, to allow other people to be part of our journey and to own our own scars. I love the title of that. Own your own scars. Love it.
Yeah, I did that because I feel like, earlier in my seasons, I was telling everybody how I grew up, and like you know, you had your ideas of what you wanted to do when you grew up. And for me, I loved pictures, I loved pageantry, I loved all of that stuff and beauty queens, right? So for me, I just found it so um amazing to see these beautiful women, and they were smiling, and they seemed to be so perfect. But then as you get older, you start to understand that the perfection is just a gimmick, and they are really broken inside.
Yes.
And beauty is literally only skin deep, because a lot of us are walking around with masks. And that's why the title of the podcast is The Blemished Beauty, because like them, you know, we walk around beautiful on the outside, but on the inside we're broken.
Yes.
And you know, now that you're older, and now we are in the age where we can define certain things and label things and go to therapy and all of that stuff, now it's available to us. It's time for us to start owning the scars and allowing us to match the beauty that's on the outside as well as the inside, and show up in places happier, healed, and whole. So that's why I love stories like yours and different people, because there is beauty on the other side, as well
Yes.
as, you know, like you said, the trauma and then the testimony. God definitely can create a new situation out of a bad situation, but we
Absolutely.
have to trust Him. And it all boils down, because I just had an episode about this too. It all boils down to the relationship. Once you have a relationship with God, it gives you the confidence to really want to do better and show up better for yourself and take leaps of faith, because you know, just like we were saying earlier, that He's enduring the storm with us. So there's
Absolutely.
no need for us to fret or worry. We could just walk out on the water, because His track record is impeccable. So I love that you know, you write and you blog and you continue to be a light despite the things that you have been through. And I think that's why we go through what we've been through, because it gives you a level of compassion for
Absolutely.
people, and it softens your heart, and it makes you empathetic, you know, because you know what it's like not to have people show up for you, or you know what it's like, you know, to not have that love. Or like for me, I know what it's like not to have a safe space, so I create a safe space for other people. And I think that's why, you like you said, we have to trust the process, because we are being, just like the caterpillar, we are being created, and all of those things that was in us were being cultivated in us. So when we were able to blossom, like now, we are now able to do what we were set to do, which is show empathy, show compassion, write blogs to inspire and encourage people. Because I'm pretty sure people who have read your blogs, they now have the confidence to say, okay, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
time for me to leave. I can I
No,
can
I was
definitely
thinking
go.
because, with the title of yours, your own scars, own your own scars. I did write a blog about trauma is like being a burn patient, where
Mhm.
it's hard to touch, and years ago in 1994, I actually became a burn patient. I had a pressure canner blow up on me,
Wow.
and I was I was canning spaghetti, and the pressure canner chose to seal itself, and all the pressure and the spaghetti like flew all over the place. I spent 17 days in a burn unit, and I had my breast burned. And so every day for 5 days, they would take me 2 times a day. They would take me into this room. They would tie my hands onto a metal bed. They would jack me up with morphine, and they would take a Brillo pad and start scrubbing the residue
Wow.
off of my breast over and over again, starting to, and you were awake for it. They tried to morphine you, but you were getting scrubbed. They were
Mhm.
trying to get all that residue off of my breast. And then they finally decided that they were just going to graft me. And so I think about that, and I think about the scars, and I think about the burn. I literally had have a word picture, that God gave to me, in 20 years ago that he gave to me, that when we see people and we have to deal with people in their trauma, picture them as a burn patient, and they have to get the residue of the pain and the life that they had. They have to get rid of that residue in order for the new skin to grow. And sometimes people would rather stay in their trauma because they don't want to go through the Brillo pad. They don't want to go through that process because that process is hard. That process hurts. That process is scary because they know how to stay in their trauma. But it's our responsibility, kind of to keep telling our stories, to keep allowing our stories to resonate to them, because I know literally what it means to have to get rid of the residue, of being a burn patient. And I think about, for the last 17 years, I have been blessed. And if you want to, I have been blessed, and yet wow, I can't believe I do this kind of job. I go into people's homes all day long. And because of the company that I work for, I used to work for the Census Bureau, and now I work for a data company. And we actually go into people's homes and we do surveys. So for the last 17 years, I have been in hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of homes, and sat at their tables to hear their stories. And for all of us, we have a preconceived idea, about people, about life, about situations. And when you have to be in people's homes all day long, and for as long as I have done it, those preconceived ideas, those preconceived notions about people and what we believe about certain people, what we believe about groups of people, what we believe about demographics, when you have to go into these people's homes all day, all of that disappears. Because now you begin to see the person and you begin to see the story. You no longer look at the data that our society gives to us. Now you are actually in homes with real people, with real situations. And I think that part of that has helped me to become the person that I am today, because I have spent 17 years in all walks of life. I was in a home yesterday that was fleas, and they had 22 cats inside of a mobile home. And I had to put a smile on my face and just say, and sit there and let them let them talk and hear their stories, and so I think when you have jobs like that and you have situations like that, you're able to begin to see people as human. You begin to see people and their stories as that they have been just as hurt as you are. And a group of us, like when I talk about my books and I talk about wanting people to be brave enough to tell their own story, there's a group of us that we would love to do a conference on same story, same story, different cultures. Because the stories that we go through, the abuse that we go through, the sexual abuse that we go through, the physical abuse, the domestic violence, the hurt, the pain, the attempted suicide, there is no demographics. There's no culture that has it worse than the other.
Right.
We are at the same, so we need to begin to start locking arms and locking hands with each other, because we all have those stories. And we all live in a time, and in a time period today, we weren't allowed to share our stories when we were little girls. But now we live in a time that we're allowed to share our stories. We're allowed to reveal our secrets in our home that happened in our homes. We couldn't do that as little girls. We lived in a time that whatever happened in your home, it stays in your home. And don't you dare tell anybody that we have Uncle Sammy over here at our house. Don't you dare tell anybody that your father is a drunk. Don't you ever say anything. Don't you ever tell anybody that your mom, slapped you with a shoe, in your face. We weren't allowed to tell those stories. And so it made us always feel like, for me, it made me feel like I was living in a globe.
Right.
And that everybody else around me had this great life, and I was stuck in this globe. And then when I wrote my book, I realized that other people lived in a globe too. We just weren't allowed to tell our secrets.
Yep.
And now we can own our scars. There is no reason, and there's nothing now in today's society that you need to be stuck in your own scars, because there's enough stuff out there. There's enough healing out there. There's enough women out there that are telling their stories. There's enough help out there that your scars don't have to be hidden anymore. You can get rid of the residue, and now you can walk forward, because now you live in a time that you can be set free.
Yes, I love that. And that's so true. Like nowadays, a lot of people, when you're celebrities, they'll be like, oh, well, I love the celebrity because they're representation of me. And I get to see myself on screen, or I get to see myself on the radio, or whatever the case may be. So now it's the same thing in regards to the stories. Now you get to hear your story, like you said, different cultures. But now I get to hear my story with these podcasts or these blogs or different things. So if these women can survive this and go through this, and some way worse than what we've encountered, if they can get through all of this and still have joy on the other side, then my situation pales into comparison to what they've been through. I definitely can get through that.
Absolutely.
So I love that, you have these stories and these blogs to encourage people. I want you to take a moment now to give people the information on where they can find you. They can support your blog and your books and all the things. And I'll give you your solo now.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to speak life into you, and for you to understand that you are your own hero. I would love for you to be able to subscribe to my website, healingthroughstories.com. It is all one word. Once again, it's healingthroughstories.com. You are able to read some of the things that I have written. And if you are brave enough and want the opportunity to be able to write, a blog to encourage others on my website, you can send me an email, josephine.rstory@gmail.com. Our story is all one word. You can also find me on Facebook. My name is Bambi Lynn on Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram, which is lynn.bambi. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, but my books are sold on my website, and they're also sold on Amazon. My first book is called The Journey of Josephine. It actually looks like this, because there is another Bambi Lynn that is on Amazon. So this is my first book, The Journey of Josephine. My second book is The Treasures of My Heart. It is a book about the fact that when we go through storms, there are treasures that are in the midst of the storm. So I am so excited to be on this podcast, and thank you so much for listening. And I hope that both of us were able to share with you on how we have gone through the ashes into the beauty, and how God did take broken girls and he molded us, and now we are becoming all that we were meant to be. So God bless you. Fix your crown, as you are the daughter of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
I love that. I thank you so much for coming on and telling your story and inspiring. Like you said, I appreciate you for doing this episode with me.
Well, I'm so glad that we met on this other podcast.
Yes.
So it does work. It actually does do domino effects.
Yes. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, I want you to remember that you have been graced and gifted for a time such as this. You have purpose in this world, and you have been created to do great and amazing things. So until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and don't forget to leave a review. You can follow Shira on all major platforms and on YouTube at Shira Renee 510. Until next time, spread love, show grace, and shine bright.